welcome to An Apple a Day with Dr. Amanda. I'm so glad you're here. So please grab a seat, maybe grab an apple, maybe some tea, and get ready for this week. We are going to be talking about overcoming negative mindsets. And I'm so glad you're here. So please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend. So again, I have a YouTube channel and a podcast, and the point and purpose of this is for people to be empowered by sharing their stories and empowering others to continue to be encouraged and be the best version of yourself. And so I'm really excited today to have my friend, Ron Middleton here. And Ron is a teacher and a traveler, and he has his ministry called RJ Ministries 2906. So without further ado, Ron, I'm just so glad to have you here. So welcome.
Hey, everybody. Hello.
And so Ron, just going to talk today and have conversation, but wanted to start with, what is, and I guess really a mindset, sometimes we talk about negative and a positive mindset. And what would you say that looks like for you?
Well, a negative mindset starts with not thinking enough about yourself, thinking poorly about yourself. And then all of a sudden, I'm not good enough and I'm not smart enough and I can't get ahead and everything turns bad. Nobody likes me. Whatever we're doing, it just turns out bad because we think it's going to turn out bad. So it does. And, it ends up being that the more we think negatively about ourselves, we think negatively about the world. And that's who we become because we speak darkness instead of light. So if we speak negative, it just builds and grows.
That's good. So I agree. So you're saying, like, depending on what we're thinking, or if we're focusing on all the negative or what might happen or getting nervous, or maybe perhaps constantly being consumed, right, on things in our head, then we can have roots that kind of don't produce a lot of healthy thinking or even perhaps helping us move forward.
And then when we become negative, then we start hanging around with negative people because they're like us. Instead of saying, no, I can't be here, I need to be with somebody that thinks positively.
That's true too, because so sometimes if we have that negative thinking, we might end up being with people that may not help us, right? Things
Right.
like have our destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then where do you think, and I guess like how or when, or how do you think a negative mindset is formed? Like, I know obviously over our lifetime, where do you think it begins and how do you think people change from that type of mindset?
Well, this is the saddest part for me, is because too many times it starts when we're just a child.
Mhm.
Because most parents didn't have a book of instructions how to raise a happy, positive child. They just do the best they can. And sometimes the stress of the world gets on them, so they take it out on their children. And I know personally that's how it went for me. So you grow up as a child thinking you're not good enough and you're not smart. People are telling you that, you're no good, you're lazy, and parents don't understand how one little word turns into who that child's going to be. It's just, whether it's school, somebody starts, maybe you have good parents and you get to school and somebody starts picking on you. And all of a sudden it's like, well, what's wrong with me? And you don't get in with the cliquey group. You just seem to be on the outside all the time. So there's, that childhood from, a few years old until, you finish high school is a really risky area to stay positive.
And I like how you shared, again, Ron, about some of your own experiences and talked really about childhood, right? Where I really always like to call them seeds, right? Every thought or every word that people speak, we speak to each other, right? In families, the mom and dads have a lot of that, and other people, but every little word we speak is almost like a seed, right? That we either take in, that's either going to bring us healthy mindsets or impact us in a negative way. And and I appreciate you sharing about, oh well, if this happened, or my family may not have known, or they may have had the same thing happen to them, right? It could be a family cyclical thing, unfortunately. And then if you have people in school, saying the same thing, then you might, like you said, keep hearing, oh, you're lazy, or you're not good enough. And that almost becomes internalized. And I think that happens a lot. And then I think of kids, Ron, I don't know if you agree, but there are some kids that, again, at home, unfortunately, because maybe their family, that's how they were raised, or, they were taught to do that. They hear it from home and school, right? So everywhere you go, you're bombarded with this message that you're not enough.
Yeah, and the end result is, like, for me, I became quite introverted. I didn't talk to people because, when I did speak, it was like, well, that's really dumb.
Mhm.
And, you grow up on a farm and there's no time for anything except work. So you're not around people a lot because you're always working. So I myself just turned quite introverted and probably still have a little bit of that today. But, I've worked out of it over my life where I am comfortable talking with people and being open.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful, Ron, and there are probably people in the audience that might relate, that again, when you were growing up, things that you heard and then working through it, right? Because then it takes time as, once we have that mindset, right? Figuring out what are some tools, which really goes into, my next question is how did you start, so maybe you had that mindset when you were younger. When did you start to realize that, maybe I am good enough, or, there's a better way to think about myself. Like, can you share about that?
Well, I always remember this clear as day because nobody said, "Oh, we love you." Nobody hugged you. It was just, growing up on the farm, you work. But one day, my mom looked at my report card and she goes, "Oh, you're really getting good grades." And I heard that and I went, "Oh my gosh, I did something good." So it turned out that I was like, okay, maybe I'm smart. So
Hmm.
I started working really hard at school to get straight A's if I could, or just a couple of B's. But I mean, worked hard at that. And then people were like, oh, that guy's really smart. I was like, whoa. So it was a major turning point where I could say, well, maybe there is something good about me, and what else can I find?
I like that. I like how, but it was your mom, right? That's significant, and other people, but you heard something different, and all of a sudden that those roots, right? That negative, there was a shift where you heard something different. You're like, oh, that I am smart. Like, I'm getting these grades, and I think that's really powerful because whether it be the person that we long to hear that from, or other people, if we speak something right out in somebody and we see what they have in them, that gold pretty much is what your mom did at that time, and that shifted you. And I think that's really important because that changed, you just mentioned that changed your whole thinking as a start. That was a monumental moment for you.
Yeah. And the thing is, maybe a child doesn't have a parent that's going to trigger that,
Mhm.
but they stop hanging around all the people like them and just have one good friend that said, "Oh, I really like when you do that," or "Oh, your hair looks really nice today." Just some little thing
Mhm.
instead of hanging around with all the people that just, that's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can be hard sometimes, right? If you're always used to having people say those type of mindsets and getting around people that say some good things. And it might not be their parents, you're right, or it might not be that change, but hopefully somebody, that sees that and is speaking positively. And so, looking at how to change that. So I know you said, okay, you started to think differently. What was it specifically? Like, did you start thinking differently, or did it take time for you to believe that you were smart?
Well, I think because I knew how to work, I knew how to keep after something until it was done. So it's like whatever came up, I would find a way to get it done because that's one of the good things you learned on a farm, there wasn't money to pay people. So you learned how to fix it, you learned how to solve the problem. So, I keep going back to the early years, but that's where you become who you are, that's where you define. And I remember that I was getting ready my senior year to graduate, and you receive a scholarship from the ability to get a scholarship. So your guidance counselor directs you into that school and into that line of career because there's a scholarship instead of asking you, well, what do you really want to do? So I ended up in a school because I had a scholarship. But my dream as a child was to be a fighter pilot.
Mm.
And they said, well, that doesn't work because you wear glasses. Oh, bummer. So I thought, well, I'm going to work on fighter jets. I'm
Mm.
going to get a job and I'm going to work on them. I'll be close to them. And so I was actually going to college and I had aerospace engineering. And after the first year of college, they got all the aerospace people in one big dormitory and they said, we just want to let you know when you graduate, there's going to be no jobs. The government's cutting everything, so there won't be any jobs, and we're just letting you know.
Mm.
I was so upset. I mean, this was my third dream gone out the window. But
Mm.
I'm like, hey, instead of continue down a dead end road or sit and cry about it, I said, well, what am I going to do? So I switched my major because I asked myself, what's going to be around forever? And I thought diesel trucks. So switched my major to diesel technology so that at least I could accomplish something. So here I am. I switch my careers and I get done and I graduate. Okay, I got the big degree now. And they have all the headhunters come in last week of school and they offer you jobs. And this guy offers me $400. Like $400? $400 a month? You mean a week? He goes, no, a month. And I looked at this guy and I said, I make $1,000 a month working in a factory as a welder at night while I go to school. And now I have this big degree and you're going to give me $400? Oh, yeah, but if you work for us like 10 years, you'll be making the big money. I was stunned.
Yeah.
Amanda, I was just like, what? 400 bucks? So anyway, I just walked out of there really disappointed. But again, you persevere, you just look for an opportunity. I thought, okay, I have this high tech degree, but I'm just a mechanic.
Mm.
So here I was making $1,000 a month, welder, and this guy offers me 400. I get a job as a mechanic, and I am making $3,000 a month.
Wow.
Because I didn't say, oh, woe is me.
Mm.
You just take a step, look around, see what's available. But that was such a change about, continuing with, perseverance.
Yeah, and that's a great start, and obviously, you had those dreams. So the pilot dream, and then you had to shift a little bit, and then they're like, well, this isn't available. And then you had to shift again, and thinking, well, how can I find something sustainable? But again, that takes that thoughts, that mindset to try to look for what could be a positive, right, out of a really hard situation, right? Something that you loved, that you wanted to do, and then turn it around for the good. And then even that, $400 being like, oh, there might be something else that comes out of it. So I appreciate, you sharing that, and even that perseverance, and I think, I don't know about you, if you agree with me, Ron, but sometimes that takes some time, it's like, you're like those hurdles, to build perseverance and keep getting back up after there's some disappointments, because that can be a real hard shift, I think, for the mind when you have disappointments, and learning how to navigate that.
That's true.
Yeah. And then I know you sort of talked about the struggles with the negative mindset, but is there anything else that you think can be hard? Maybe you've experienced or you see people really struggle with? And I don't know, again, depending on childhood, because you mentioned childhood, and there can be complexities with childhood, right? There could be all kinds of things that have happened to people. But I wonder if, I know you talk a lot and I know you have your ministries, but if anything that a lot of people say, and they tend to say that kind of get them stuck in a negative mindset.
Things that they say that make that stick.
Yeah, like sometimes where it's like a struggle to get out of it. I wonder if you've, because, and I know my life history, or when talking to people, sometimes there could be really painful events, and I feel like there are those negative mindsets, but sometimes when you don't know how to get out of it, right? Like if you have a negative mindset or something's happened and it's just really tough to navigate. I don't know if you hear that a lot with people where they just don't know how to break free from, a thinking pattern or a mindset. And so it's years till they shift?
Yes. Well, there's two ways that I know you can do this. And when you're in that woe is me spot,
Mhm.
think it yourself, or hopefully you have someone that can ask you the question, what's the one thing you've done that you think of that was really good?
Mhm.
Everybody's done something good, but they forget about it.
Yeah.
You start with that one good thing. Well, I remember when I went to this workshop and everybody went, boy, you're really good at that.
Mhm.
So, well, there you go. There's a start.
Mhm.
Or somebody else comes up and tells you one good thing. But if we can't find one good thing about ourselves, which we all have some good,
Mhm.
and start there, that, it's the one thing. That's the easier one. But when, you want to make a change in life, there's there's so many books, there's so many. I used to read books and listen to cassette tapes.
Mhm.
People probably don't know what those are, some of the young kids, but uh, I just got books and tapes. I mean, I just buy a $10 book and read it, and I'm like, wow, I wonder if I could do that.
Mhm.
And then, as I started becoming better at being positive, I'm like, well, I should look at more positive things. And there was one that I always remember because they said, everybody's got a dream. And maybe they're just really down right now and they don't know how to get there. But I really like this one. It's called Goal Boarding. And you get a big poster and you cut out pictures of who you want to be in the future. You cut out, I had a picture of a businessman with a tie on. I had fancy cars. I had a nice house, but I posted all that on my refrigerator. So every time I went there, I saw it. And your mind goes, that's who you're going to become. That's who you want to be. It really stuck. It really worked for me.
Good. And I like how if you're thinking about what you're thinking about, or you have some type of vision that helps, right? That helps kind of shift you to get to that next step.
Yeah, if you find that one thing to start that you say, well, I remember that I did that really well. Maybe that's where I should direct myself, where my skills are. If you're, a cleaner that's just got a job cleaning, a business building or a restaurant every night,
Mhm.
well, I'm really good at cleaning because everybody says I really do a good job. I
Mhm.
wonder if I start a business doing my own cleaning and making a lot more money. So if you take something that you're good at and you just grow with.
Yeah. And I like that. And I think you mentioned something in the beginning just about every person has something good that they do, right? Everybody has a gift or everybody has something that no one else has. And I think you mentioned that because if we can just share that, even with somebody, right? Sometimes we have people that we get along with well, right? And then we have different personalities, but even in the people that we may not, right, always see eye to eye with, they have something good that they bring us, right? Or they have something good in them that, again, if we remember that, I think that's a great, example, because if we can just share with people what we appreciate about them, I think in this world right now, I don't know if you agree, but in our world right now, we could all probably benefit from just being kind to each other, and bringing out like, this is what I really appreciate about you, or this is what you're doing well. And imagine if we just spoke that over each other, I mean, the internet and the media, and even when we talk about people who may have different perspectives than we do, imagine what our world could be, Ron, if we could bring out that golden people. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's what you're saying, Amanda, and we need to really fine tune, point that out. That is so important for each one of us to give a compliment, to say something nice, so that it's similar to somebody saying, "Oh, you got good grades." Other than that, who knows where I'd be?
Yeah.
Start.
Yeah. And I think you never know what your words or your smile will do, right? I mean, there's just all these stories that someone could be having a really hard day, right? And even in this, we have COVID, right? We have people that are afraid, we have people that are indoors. And imagine just, Ron, I think, when I go around, what that could do if we just say that, someone who's in such distress, and we're able to redirect that, right? By telling them, wow, I really like how you do this. That really shifts that atmosphere, doesn't it? When we can speak that life-giving words into an atmosphere or into a person, right? It kind of shifts them a little bit and has them think about something different.
I want to just kind of throw a word of encouragement in there, because people might say, well, why would I why would I do that? Be focused on giving out compliments.
Mm.
Because when you do, say that you give out 10 compliments this week, and somebody down the line 2 months from now, you're looking at them and go, what happened?
Mm.
Now, when you told me that, well, that kind of woke me up. That inspired me a little bit. And then you have that reward of just a silly compliment turning into life changing for somebody.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we don't even realize, even some people, whether it be kids, right, or youth or adults, sometimes we don't realize the words that we speak, but people remember, and I don't know about you, but I've had people come up to me years later, even before I am where I am now, and say, I remember you, you were always positive. I'm like, really? And it's like amazing because, and again, we want to be, I think, and I don't know if you agree, every person really, I think, truly wants to be kind to people. Sometimes they're going through things that are hard, or people are hurting, and so it comes out, that pain comes out. But I really truly believe that every person is capable of saying nice things. They may not have heard it themselves, but if we keep, as we continue, I think, to continue to grow, and as we keep having that positive mindset or even healing, our words can actually be healing to others. So I think, who knows, right? The impact, sometimes we don't even know. We could say something like, I love the way that you're cleaning. Like you kind of mentioned somebody who's cleaning. We could be at Starbucks, right? Or we could be at a coffee shop and just tell somebody, I really like how you're organizing. And we don't know that that person was like totally going to quit, right? Or think like everything was wrong about them. And like just by that, we switch it, right? And then all of a sudden, years down the road, we may never meet them again. But that shifted their whole life. Kind of like where you talked about your mom saying something over you, right? About your good grades, and it shifted you. There's that click. And we could be the click for somebody, which is pretty powerful.
That's right. Let's click, click.
I like it. So again, just thinking about mindsets, and I know, Ron, perhaps, I know you always talk about thinking, you talked a lot about the power of words, but I don't know if there's anything else with helping a positive mindset shift, or how do we support people, really flip their script. So going from that negative to positive mindset, if there's anything else that you want to talk about in that area to support, to help people that has changed your life.
So back in my day, starting out, it was books. There's so many books which now are just social media, internet. You can get anything. Then there's some really good people out there that can motivate, can pick you up, can change your life just reading a book.
Mhm.
And I remember some of the important ones. And way back, there was a guy by the name of Jim Rohn, Rohn.
Okay.
His stuff isn't seen around much more, but that guy was so nice. He talked about just what we're talking about,
Hmm.
how little things made a difference.
Yeah.
Go on about, we went to the ice cream store to get a malt. We got a malt, and I just bought 3. I got an extra one, and I gave it to this man outside, and he was just dumbfounded.
Mm.
Believe it. But this Jim Rohn was good at doing that. If he was in the middle of something, he would get a little extra, give it to somebody. He always gave a good comment. And he was changing people's lives. And he
Yeah.
wrote books about it. And he changed my life some.
Mm.
But there's so many people out there. Some of the ones nowadays are Rich Man, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there's the Stephen Covey with all his books,
Yeah.
7 Habits of Successful People.
Mm-hmm.
Robbins was a big one for me back in the day, and he's still hard at it. He's
Yeah.
doing virtual stuff now.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Yeah. So just imagine, with the power of words, or writers, right, in different books, but, different people, like you mentioned, Tony Robbins, or Joe Martin, even up to presidency, people who have heard, the power of that positive thinking and how to shift that thinking, right, even when it's hard, to help you move forward. And it's not always easy, right? There's some things that can be really hard, but learning that it's possible, and keeping that hope that there is possibility for that shift. And I think that is important. That's what keeps us going. So that's really great that you were able to share those stories.
And, each of it is that when you are stepping out and you fail, if you just go, oh, I knew I couldn't do it. I tried, but I couldn't do it. If you don't understand that successful people have failed many times, they get caught up in that. But if you understand and look at the successful people, I mean, the most successful people, they say, have gone bankrupt 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whoa, how do you get past that?
Yeah.
That's what it takes if you don't
Yeah.
try bigger.
Yeah. Or even like, when you're in that loss, and then when you learn it, and being able to go, and that's pretty amazing, right? Because you imagine like bankruptcy, but then they bounce back, then there's another one. Or like if you're like, working and you're in that, but I feel like that also is, again, mindset, right? They know they're going to get out of it, right? They know that there's skills and that there's hope to overcome that, which is I think is a big mindset shift. That's pretty powerful. Just in thinking of that. And I think not always in that area, because again, there could be different things. Now for me, I'm always looking at, because my heart is always complex trauma. So some people have been through some really, really, really devastating things, right? And that can take some time. So for me, I've worked with people, again, there's different types of traumas, but that can take some time, and there's a process. But as you keep conquering, right, each thing that may have been spoken over you or different things, that, and it can be a slower process, a quicker process, but I think, depending on what that is, I think even just that little hope, because I know, for some people, and again, men and women think differently about it, but we all have emotions, right? We all have feelings, and we all have events that have happened to us, that we can relate to each other. I think that it is important, to have those people, like you said, that are positive around us, but also sometimes how to sit with people that it's just hard, like they're just really trying to learn. Because a lot of times, Ron, with like abuse or any kind of thing, I always call this identity abuse, right? I feel like half of our lives, or most of my life, I don't know about you, was learning who I really am. Who am I? And I had to learn, well, who am I, right? Because when you have all those words swirling at you and you've gone through things, you really have to learn who you really are. And I think that's a big battle in life, right? That we can conquer, and there's victory in it. But I think that a big thing is learning who are we really and what are we going to think on.
Identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Identity is the mindset, isn't it? Because you can either think that you're something that you're really not, but you almost have to really, I feel like it's almost like a switch. And once you finally get it, right, you get it. Even, and then when those things come up again, the stronger and deeper rooted you are, right, and knowing who you are, it's different. But I think that's, I don't know about you, but for me, most of my life, that's why I'm so passionate about the mindset, is that I've really had to overcome a lot of things. And I find now, I didn't understand it later, but now I know the processes. But I also realized that it was a lot of like mental gymnastics, are really like a lot of growing, because you're building deeper roots, so every time you realize who you are, it's almost like you get deeper and deeper, right, deeply rooted into your true identity, and everything else kind of has to get uprooted, right? But it's a process. But I feel like now I almost am thankful for those processes, because it took me some time to get it. But once you get it, then you're pretty steadfast.
Yeah. When you talk about identity, I mean, I had been in the real estate business for a number of years.
Mhm.
I mean, going way back in 1982 was the S&L crisis,
Hmm.
and interest rates went, mortgage interest rates went over 17%.
Wow.
People can't even imagine that now. So
Mhm.
I had a loan come due on a house that I was rehabbing, and nobody would a renewal. So I had to go to a company that would give me the loan at 24% interest.
Wow.
But I am who I am, and I'm going to be this real estate guy, so I have to figure this out. And so I just put all my resources on that one loan and paid it off as soon as I could.
Mhm.
So then everything's rolling along, and I'm growing bigger and bigger, and everything's good. I'm still working full time. And then in 2008, everything went bad.
Mhm.
That was a great recession. So on paper, I was bankrupt. because all my properties had fallen so much in value.
Mm.
And banks were in trouble, so they were calling their loans due. So basically, they were telling me, pay off your loan or we're going to take your properties and sell them. Well, you don't have the money to pay off the loan or you wouldn't ask for the loan.
Right.
So it was, there's where your identity comes into play. You had to say, well, I'm not a loser. I've done all these things good. So I'm a real estate guy and I'm going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just kept going to 20, 25 banks until one said, okay, if you pay down this little bit, then we'll renew your loan.
Mm.
Changed everything. And of course, real estate came back. But it's when you hit those hard times, you don't just sit down or quit or say, oh, it was me, but you say, okay, this is who I am and I can deal with this. I can figure it out.
Yeah, that's good. And I like that you shared about, even your own story, the real estate and that high interest, but then you're going to all these different banks and trying to get it. And then that final one, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, if you just pay this off. So you had that perseverance that you were learning, right? And continuing to do over time.
And it's knowing who you are. You are a real estate person. You are a real estate investor. And because the economy changes, you're not going to be that anymore.
Yeah, that's true. So remaining in who you are, even when it doesn't look like that's who you are, right? But it is, but it's like constantly keeping that vision, right? And knowing who you really are and continuing in that, even if it doesn't look like it, right? Because sometimes we don't see what we are, right? Or we don't even see what we carry. And as we keep going, it continues to fruition. So I think if we're in the right alignment, right, and knowing who we are and in that mindset, things will come to pass. And as we keep going, and sometimes it takes some time until it all comes together. And then Ron, I don't know if there's any other resources that you would mention. I know you mentioned some books, but any other resources that you think would be helpful for people in the audience if they're going through a negative mindset that you haven't mentioned?
Well, there's a lot of positive groups around, depending on your situation, whether it's a mother's group, whether it's a worship group, whether it's a men's group.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many free things out there, especially on the internet. You can watch YouTube and people teaching you how to deal with any kind of issue. And most of it's free. It's just going there and actually spending a little time on it instead of watching TV or things like that.
Yeah. So finding some positive groups, that's helpful too, right? People who are positive or finding groups that are aligned with where you're thinking or where you want to be. As we're finishing up this session, Ron, is there any one wisdom tip that you would have for people that are either struggling with mindset or shifting to a positive mindset? Like what's one final tip you would give them or advice?
Well, you are who you say you are. What we speak is who we are. So if you keep telling yourself that you're not good enough or you can't do it, that's what's going to happen. If you say, I really can do this, at least I can try, it'll start there.
I like that. So one step at a time. So, right, what you say over yourself, what you speak out about who you are matters. And as you keep saying that, right, and keep one step at a time, it will come. So even if you try, like you said the word try. So even if you, don't necessarily believe it yet, if you just take one step. And I know Ron, mentioned before that, yes, like I always say, I always think of like Thomas Edison or different people, like it took 1,000 tries till he got the light bulb, right? Now we have light. And so a lot of times people that you think are really successful, and I always say, what is success, right? Success could be so many things. It could be you overcoming your mindset, right? It could be you finally getting to a goal that took you years, right? It could be you, and again, knowing that sometimes I always say that failure, and even my one mentor says like failure is really just an opportunity to learn. And that's a shift in mindset, right? Because if it's really, failure is really just, you can take it as either, okay, success could be a win or it can be an opportunity to learn, right? And both are success, because if you learn from something that doesn't go the way you think it does, it's still a success, right? So it's always about flipping that. I don't know if you agree, Ron, but I always think that, you know, when I do something and it doesn't go the way I expected, I try to always say, what can I learn from this? Or I don't know, you know, sometimes if I'm doing something and you're like, okay, I don't know if this is really impacting people, and you get somebody say, oh, wow, I watched this. Even if it's one person that you're impacting, that's success. You know, it doesn't have to be the whole world. I think sometimes just think big, but also knowing the small things, what you think might be a failure might be somebody else being empowered by what you do.
That's right.
You agree?
Yeah. You know, I don't see it much anymore, but they had teachers a ways back for me, but they would go, just say the positive. So you want to water ski, but you're not good at it all. So they would tell you, just say you're a fabulous water skier. Say that you're a really good water skier. So your mind gets used to that instead of, boy, I'm not good at this at all. And they say, you know, it's like fake it till you make it. Yeah, there's a lot in that to say, well, I am going to be that person. And that I was working as a mechanic, and even though I made good money, it was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
About that goal boarding, and I put that picture of me in a white shirt and a tie, and you know, it just at a nice fancy desk, and I put a car and a house and everything up there, and it changed me because I saw that every day.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. And plus all the different skills you get from the different, you know, as you're growing into who you are, right? There's also part of that is you really are that person, but you're just learning the skill set for it, right? So you like learned over your years. I'm sure, Ron, you know, you've learned all the things that have brought you to the point you're at now, right? And then it's only going to continue to grow, you know, from where you're at. I feel like we constantly have the opportunities to keep growing, right? Into the person we're going to be. I feel like it's a constant shift.
It's a work in progress.
Yes, it is, right? Every day.
Yeah, it's no different than going to school. You didn't know in the first grade everything that was going to be in 12th grade.
This is true.
It takes you a while to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ron, you know, I thank you for your time. Audience, you know, hopefully that gives you some encouragement and empowerment that, you know, we are a lot of times we think we are, or again, sometimes we're shifting our thoughts to become who we really are. And it can be scary to sometimes change when you're used to some, you know, different way of thinking. But like Ron said, get around people that will encourage you, encourage yourself, you know, even if you need to put post-its on your little mirror or say something every day to yourself. And then make sure you do the same to others, because you never know the impact you have on yourself. It's important to say stuff to yourself that's nice, and others, and find yourself a good group of friends, right? I think those are some helpful tips.
Amen.
All right. Well, everybody, I hope you have a great day. Be well. You're loved. You're incredible out there, and we love you. And I hope to see you again tomorrow. So enjoy your night and see you tomorrow again.